When we speak of the last goodbye, what we are truly talking about is the exact moment the narcissist can no longer keep up their belief of being in total control. For years or even decades, the entire relationship has revolved around one specific way of acting. Power, not always obvious power like telling you your every move, though that happens often, but something much deeper. It is complete mind control. It is the artificial feeling that they are the primary focus and that your feelings and ideas exist only because of them. The narcissist relies entirely on this dynamic to function, absorbing every bit of energy from it. When you speak a real final goodbye, break the cycle of confusion, and pull away fully, that whole artificial setup completely falls apart. You must grasp something crucial about people who live in this way. Their sense of identity is not built on anything stable. A healthy person, even when facing severe rejection or being left alone, has an inner foundation to rely on during tough times. They have an internal framework of values, goals, and real connections that holds them up during loss. The narcissist has none of this. Their self is assembled like an unstable house of mirrors, constantly reflecting the attention and praise of outsiders. Remove those reflections and the whole house shatters. The final goodbye is not just painful to them, it threatens their core existence. It feels like absolute death because the persona they constructed cannot survive without someone else watching it. This is why losing power terrifies them so deeply. Control is not just a tactical choice for them, it is their literal lifeline. The connection was never truly about genuine care or love. It was about locking you firmly into their constructed world. That attachment allows them to feel real, but when it breaks, when you step away and refuse to be pulled back, they are left entirely alone with themselves. That is precisely what they cannot tolerate. They cannot stand themselves, nor can they sit with the vast emptiness left behind when the game ends. Stay tuned because understanding this single truth changes how you view their entire behavior. Now, it is crucial to note that not all goodbyes trigger this breakdown in the same manner. Many times people leave but remain emotionally hooked, arguing, answering messages, and reacting to drama. The narcissist actually draws strength from that because even intense anger serves as a powerful connection. But the genuine goodbye, the one where you fully detach, removes even that emotional supply. This is why it hits so differently. It cuts the very last thread, the silence, the total absence, and the refusal to react deal a lethal blow to their illusion of authority. Picture a hunter that suddenly finds its target gone. The hunter does not simply walk away quietly, it thrashes around wildly, growing frantic because its survival depends on the chase. In that exact same way, the narcissist's sense of self relies on your continued participation in their manufactured drama. When the drama stops, they are left completely exposed to the harsh light of reality. It is not merely that they lost your presence, they lost the entire framework that made them feel strong, important, and alive. This collapse usually brings a dramatic display of emotions, explosive rage, total denial, a thirst for revenge, or sudden desperate begging. But if you observe closely, you will see the exact same underlying desperation driving every single action. They cannot accept losing control because it is not just a relationship they lost, but their entire psychological structure. The final goodbye forces this reality into the open, stripping away the false idea that they were ever truly in charge. Here is the strange twist. The very thing they fight hardest to protect their sense of power is what they lose, the instant you walk away for good. In their frantic attempts to hold on, they inadvertently expose just how fragile they really are. It is never genuine strength driving their actions, but deep weakness hidden behind a curtain of dominance. The final goodbye exposes this fundamental truth. So when the game is over, when the last move is played, The narcissist does not merely feel standard sadness or anger. They feel utterly destroyed, experiencing the total collapse of a carefully constructed world where they ruled at the center. That is why they fight so fiercely and why they refuse to let things end cleanly. The loss of control is not only their greatest fear, it is their inevitable fate, because no lie, no matter how elaborate, can sustain itself forever. When it breaks down and you step away, you reveal the ultimate truth. Their power was never real to begin with. Losing that control is not just the end of a relationship, it is the absolute destruction of their false identity. And in that precise moment, you finally become free. They are left alone to face the one opponent they can never defeat, themselves. As you reach this point of a final goodbye, one of the first things you will notice is a massive explosion of rage. It is vital to realize that narcissistic rage is nothing like normal anger. Normal anger is generally balanced, arising when someone feels hurt or treated unfairly, and it can usually be expressed, resolved, and forgotten. Narcissistic rage is a sudden, extreme blast coming from a much darker place. It is the immediate reaction of someone whose fragile self-image has been threatened at its core. What makes this fury so terrifying is that the narcissist views your departure as far more than simple rejection. To them, it is an unforgivable betrayal that shatters their illusion of superiority. They genuinely believed they were the vital center of your world, and when you walk away, you prove that was never true. Instead of accepting reality, they strike back with wild fury because managing emotions in a mature way was never something they learned. During childhood, many narcissists learn to handle intense feelings of shame or worthlessness by constructing a grand false self, an exaggerated image of complete confidence and supreme importance. This false self became their defensive shield. But when your final goodbye pierces that armor, all the buried pain breaks through to the surface. Rage becomes their ultimate defense mechanism to push away the unbearable truth that they are powerless and that their grand image was a trick all along. This is why their fury takes on so many terrifying shapes. Sometimes it is explosive screaming, cruel insults, and direct threats. Other times it is cold, calculated, and quiet, silent treatments, malicious rumors, and deliberate attempts to turn mutual friends against you. They might even play the fragile victim, shedding tears to hide their intense hostility. But every variation stems from the exact same root. They cannot tolerate that you refuse to feed their story anymore. What stands out most is how completely unbalanced this reaction appears to an outside observer. You might wonder why a standard breakup triggers such extreme ferocity. But remember, you are not watching a reaction to a breakup. You are witnessing the complete breakdown of their manufactured identity. Your departure feels like the absolute end of the world to them. And if you have ever experienced this, you know how incredibly disorienting it feels. The sheer intensity of their anger can make you second-guess your choices, leaving you wondering if you truly are the heartless villain they claim you are. But make no mistake, this is part of the trap. Their fury is not just emotional spillover. It is a calculated effort to manipulate you back into the old dynamic where you react and they remain dominant. Holding your ground against this storm is extremely difficult, yet absolutely essential for your freedom. You must realize that their anger is ultimately not about you at all. It is about them and the hollow void inside them that your absence reveals. They project that internal emptiness onto you, accusing, blaming, and attacking, because attacking you is far easier than facing their own reality. If you can see this clearly, viewing their anger not as a measure of your worth, but as proof of their profound weakness, you step completely outside their game. Pay close attention to this next part, because rage in this scenario is actually a full confession. It exposes everything they try so hard to hide beneath their boastful exterior. For all their outward arrogance, their rage reveals the plain truth. They are deeply terrified of being unimportant, terrified of abandonment, and terrified of facing themselves without a mirror to validate them. The rage is simply the mask slipping, exposing extreme weakness at the very moment they try hardest to look powerful. This is why holding your position changes everything. When you refuse to be drawn back into the dynamic, you are facing their deepest fear and taking back your independence, your strength, and your ability to walk away whole. Their rage is never proof of their power. It is absolute proof of their desperation. And once you see that, its hold over you vanishes. Narcissistic rage is simply the sound of a grand illusion shattering. And when you refuse to respond, you prove that their power over you is gone forever. Once the initial rage cools down or fails to work, narcissists usually shift into an entirely different tactic, a calculated attempt to pull you back in. It is rarely subtle or direct. Instead, it comes disguised as gentle concern, emotional appeals, or sudden vulnerability, all aimed at regaining control over your life. You must remember that narcissists do not view relationships as mutually respectful partnerships. They see them as transactional power plays where their ego is fed by your attention, energy, and compliance. Leaving creates what experts call a deep psychological wound that they simply cannot tolerate, so their mind immediately begins plotting ways to fix it. This is why so many people are shocked when a narcissist suddenly reappears with fresh tactics instead of vanishing quietly. One common tactic is hoovering, where they attempt to sweep you back into the vortex by whatever means necessary. They might act like the charming, attentive person you originally fell for, or they might leverage guilt, bringing up fond memories and acting broken to trigger your pity. If those softer methods fail, they quickly pivot to subtle threats, guilt trips, or painting you as cold and unfeeling. These are all just different angles of the exact same strategy to force you back into supplying their needs. Notice how this dynamic highlights the inherent weakness of their authority. If their power were genuine, they would never need to manipulate, guilt, or trick you into staying. Real strength stands independently without forcing compliance. What you are witnessing is extreme dependence, masked as dominance. They need you far more than you will ever need them, and that truth terrifies them. When they attempt to pull you back, it is never because they had a sudden epiphany or learned how to love. It is because your absence is a mirror reflecting their internal failure. By drawing you back in, they can temporarily cover up that wound and pretend the dynamic never broke. This is where compassionate, self-aware individuals must exercise extreme caution. Empathy is a beautiful trait, but when a narcissist acts remorseful or needy, it easily triggers your desire to heal, comfort, and forgive. Wisdom must accompany your compassion, because without boundaries, your kindness becomes the very leash used to drag you back into the abuse cycle. Ask yourself honestly, is this genuine transformation? Or is it just another calculated performance? True change requires immense time, humility, and a willingness to confront deep personal flaws, things a narcissist spends their entire life running away from. What you are seeing is pure desperation to close the wound your exit caused. There is another layer to consider here. When they try to pull you back, they are attempting to rewrite the story's conclusion. Walking away for good provides closure. And closure represents true power because it declares the dynamic permanently finished. Narcissists despise closure because it strips away their ability to direct the narrative. If they pull you back for even a moment, they regain control of the script and convince themselves you never truly left. That is why your greatest strength lies in complete silence, no explanations, no arguments, and no open doors. Every word you offer gives them fuel to twist the narrative back in their favor, while total silence establishes unshakable strength. When facing these attempts, remember what is actually happening. They are trying to avoid themselves, not express genuine care. Yielding gives them an escape route, but standing firm forces them to confront the empty reflection they dread. Their efforts to reclaim you do not prove love. They prove utter dependence. And your victory comes from recognizing that reliance and refusing to be dragged down again, when all attempts to pull you back fall flat. When the charm, guilt, and threats fail, they almost always deploy one of their most destructive weapons, the smear campaign. This is the stage where they actively rewrite history, not to convince you, but to manipulate everyone else in your shared social circle. The smear campaign is an aggressive attempt to regain dominance by controlling the public narrative after losing control over you directly. They do this because being left is a humiliating blow to their fragile ego. And shame is something a narcissist cannot endure. Since their identity relies on maintaining an image of perfection and superiority, your departure exposes them as flawed and rejected. To counter this unbearable reality, they construct an alternate narrative where you become the unstable, abusive villain and they emerge as the innocent victim. They do this to protect their social standing and to shield themselves from the painful truth of their own behavior. This tactic is especially insidious because it exploits the natural human desire to clear one's name when falsely accused. Most people instinctively want to defend themselves against lies, but the narcissist knows that defending yourself keeps you tangled in the drama they created. They watch from the sidelines, using your emotional defense as supposed proof of your instability, whispering to others about how crazy you are. Lies do not need to be factual to work. They only need to be repeated consistently to create doubt, a concept narcissists use instinctively. They care nothing for the truth, focusing entirely on perception, because in their world, optics are everything. Painting you as the problem restores their illusion of power, allowing them to project their own worst traits, control, cruelty, and dishonesty onto you. This twisted reflection lets them maintain a heroic self-image while avoiding any shred of personal responsibility. Being the target of this feels like a massive secondary betrayal, especially as people you once trusted grow distant based on fabricated stories. However, this is the exact moment where quiet dignity must override emotional impulse. The most effective response to a smear campaign is not fighting back with equal chaos, but standing completely firm in your truth. You do not need to contest every lie, but you must refuse to perform in the dynamic they built. Unwavering consistency and character speak far louder over time than frantic accusations ever will. Those who truly know you will see through the deception, while those who eagerly believe the lies reveal their own lack of discernment. This process exposes the weakness of relying on external approval. When you are secure in your identity, gossip loses its power to define you. Ultimately, the smear campaign highlights their complete inability to handle reality as they scream into the void, desperate for others to validate their version of events. After the rage, the manipulation, and the smear campaigns run their course, a quieter, more insidious phase often sets in, the narcissist sliding into deep self-pity and playing the ultimate victim. This phase can easily look like genuine regret or self-reflection at first glance. They might utter lines about how everyone always abandons them or how no one truly understands their pain, which can easily fool an untrained observer. However, this self-pity is merely another manipulative tactic designed to exploit your guilt and regain control through sympathy. Since aggressive tactics failed, they pivot to targeting your natural empathy, knowing that feeling sorry for them might draw you back into their orbit. Yet narcissistic self-pity is the exact opposite of healthy vulnerability. Real vulnerability involves honesty, accountability, and facing flaws head-on, whereas narcissistic self-pity is entirely self-centered and designed to evade responsibility. Instead of acknowledging the harm they caused, they reframe the narrative so that life and other people are always unfairly stacked against them. This performance shields their ego from shame, gains sympathy from outsiders, and gives them a comfortable story where they remain entirely blameless. Admitting that you left because of their destructive actions would require confronting their internal brokenness. so they push all accountability outward. While healthy empathy seeks to comfort those in pain, indulging a narcissist's self-pity merely enables their toxic patterns and erodes your own freedom. Differentiating between authentic vulnerability and calculated victimhood requires sharp clarity. Ask yourself if they are taking genuine responsibility or simply hunting for pity and a caretaker. Their victimhood is not evidence of innocence, but proof of their absolute refusal to face reality. Your empathy is a valuable gift, not a tool for someone else to maintain harmful cycles. True strength allows you to hold compassion without sacrificing your boundaries, recognizing their self-pity for what it is and refusing to be weighed down by it. When every strategy fails, the narcissist enters a final, hollow acceptance, not a healthy integration of loss, but a defensive, bitter retreat. On the surface, it may look like they have finally moved on, but underneath lies exhaustion and resentment rather than growth or peace. Real acceptance involves grieving, reflecting, and maturing through suffering. Process a narcissist cannot engage in because their ego cannot tolerate accountability. Instead of converting pain into wisdom, they settle into a narrative of cynicism, convincing themselves that the relationship was beneath them anyway. This quietness is not resolution. It is merely a dormant state that lasts only until a new opportunity for power presents itself. Genuine closure will never come from them. It must come entirely from within yourself, as you choose to build meaning from the experience and step forward. Expecting mutual reflection from a narcissist is an endless wait, because their retreat is just another mask to save face. True freedom arrives when you stop needing their validation or closure, recognize their quietness for what it is, and step decisively out of the game for good.